Welcome to Master Your Money, the podcast that teaches you how to take control of your hard-earned money, all while living your best life. I am your host, Elizabeth Heiza, Chief Marketing Officer at the Barnum Financial Group. I once felt powerless when it came to managing my finances, and my attitude follows suit. Until one day, I changed my mindset, built up my knowledge, and put myself back into a financial position of power. And I started this podcast to provide you with the same education and advice that I received on my journey. Now, I want to help you master your money. Hey, Master Your Money listeners. Welcome to today's show. I am thrilled to be talking to you today with my expert guest, or my guest today. We have Paul Blanco, CEO and founder of the Barnum Financial Group. Paul, welcome.
Thank you. And I would say expert guest too.
Yes, you are an expert guest for sure. You 100% are. But we're having a different conversation today, which is why I didn't use that term. But you're right. Paul is an expert in many, many areas. He has had a long, very decorated career in financial services. He is celebrating his 30th year running Barnum Financial Group, which I, for one, applaud you, as well as all the employees and advisors here at the firm.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's been fun. It doesn't even feel like 30 years.
In those 30 years, I mean, that's not what this call is about, but in those 30 years, he has won numerous awards on behalf of the firm. He has been inducted into different Hall of Fames. Paul is extremely well known within our industry as a disruptor, as an innovator, and as an advocate for financial wellness, for financial education, for financial services to all. So I wish we could spend the whole time talking about the amazing things that you have done in this industry. But today, I want you to share with our listeners more about your journey and your family's journey from how you grew up to where you are today, and how money played a part in that, and how you master your money on a daily basis.
Great. I look forward to that.
Obviously, Paul and I have worked together for 20 out of the 30 years, which is wonderful. Many of those years have been side by side. So I know just by spending so much time with you that you are a saver, that you're very conscious with your money. And I think that's important. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about money and people who have it and what that lifestyle looks like. So I want you to help our listeners get an understanding of that, what that journey was for you, and how they could learn from some of the things that you did as somebody new in the profession, and then as somebody who's graduated to where you are today.
Great. I'm ready to go.
Let's talk about, I want to start with your humble beginnings in Brooklyn. I want you to tell us what growing up in Brooklyn was like for you. I want to hear about your family, your parents, and then I want to hear about what money was like in your household as you were growing up.
So try to keep it somewhat condensed here, but grew up in Brooklyn in a neighborhood. That neighborhood, so when you think of a street, there's probably 150 houses and 100 kids. So spent most of your time outside. Was very born and raised as an athlete. So spent a lot of time playing sports on the street besides formal sports. But you built great relationships, great friendships. Your front door was always open. Your parents, like a big night out for your parents, was going down the street to another family's house to have cake, Edamons, crumb cake or donuts and coffee. And, not like a lot of drinking or anything, but they did like entertain like that.
Simple.
Yeah, very simple, very fun, not knowing any difference. Always had, a new glove, always had a new football, but money in my house was a struggle. My dad went on Social Security disability when I was 10 years old. He had an aneurysm in his head that broke. Luckily, he survived and always worked odd end jobs after that. My mom always worked 3 jobs. She hustled every day. And I remember like the only time they fought was my dad was not working and they didn't have money and they couldn't afford, and not many families had two working parents at that time.
Usually the mother stayed home, didn't work.
Yeah. And we had a tenant in a basement of the house that we lived. We lived in a house, which not all kids did in Brooklyn.
That your parents owned.
My parents owned it. They bought it when I was first born.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived there for probably most of my life. They moved when I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a tenant downstairs, and it was probably an illegal basement at the time where she paid some rent. She used to let my brother and I in when we got off the bus when we were kids because my mother wasn't home.
Mm-hmm. She was working.
I remember in 76, the Olympics, my mom should have invented like frozen hamburgers. She went to McDonald's, and because of the centennial, they had 25 cents hamburgers. She bought like 300 of them. She froze them in little baggies. On Sundays, she would make French toast and pancakes, put butter and syrup, put them in plastic bags, and put them in the freezer. So that was our microwave breakfast every day instead of eating cereal.
Yeah. That you had to buy and replace.
Yep. And so she tried to do that. And, there's a couple of stories that, she did what was called, we talked about savings, and she said you have to save and do things. And she did what was called the envelope system. And the envelope system was, if you were going to go on vacation, we never went on flying vacations.
Mm-hmm. And when you say we,
my family
and your brother
and my brother and my parents never went on flying vacations. I remember going to Disney twice. We drove. And I remember my mom saying, if the trip was $1,000, she would put $85 a month into an envelope.
Yeah.
And then she would have an envelope for different things, and always did that.
Did your mom manage the finances in your house?
She did. She gave my dad like an allowance and, and he was amazing. I was an athlete, and let's just say he always had a check in his pocket, like a blank check my mom would give him, and she'd give him $50. And if I wanted to go to the batting cage, he would blow his $50 on me at the cage, and then he would have no pocket money. But he didn't care. Like he wasn't about that. Yeah. He was about seeing his kids be better than him.
Yeah.
And, my dad passed away in 99, but I remember having conversations when I was in business, and he always would say stuff like, I wish I had this, or I wish I did that. But he didn't really want that. That wasn't really. So I would always bring him back to, remember what your goal was. Your goal was to make your two children better than you. And you did that in spades.
Yeah.
We both went to college, and those were important things to him. Yeah. So
your dad did as much as he could. It sounds like, and
he did.
And I know you and your father were incredibly close, and
Correct.
You talk about him in such beautiful ways, and you talk about him endlessly, that I feel like everybody at this firm knows your father and knows some of his isms, which is really nice.
But when it came to finances, no clue.
Is that why your mom took the lead?
Yeah, I think so. I think he was just happy with going through the way he went through and having enough to do the things he did. Mm-hmm. But deep down, he probably wanted more, but he didn't have the self-confidence.
He wanted
sometimes,
to make more.
Or have more, or be more successful, what he portrayed. But he didn't want to do the things it took.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a lot of ideas and a lot of actions, but he never put work, execution to it. Mm-hmm. So he had a great life because he hit his goals.
Yeah.
And that's what I always reminded him of. But when you get to retirement age, if you don't plan properly, I think there's like this anxiety that he was probably going through at that stage, right? Because he was in his early 60s, that you do that. But I remember a couple of quick stories on money. One was when I first started in the business. Mm-hmm. And I remember my first goal was to buy a house. And
how old were you?
I was 23 years old, and, starting from zero. And
meaning no money, no savings.
Zero, no money, no savings.
You didn't really, because you said you were an athlete. You really didn't start working until after college.
Really, a couple of odd end jobs here or there, but never to make money.
Yeah.
A couple of internships.
Yeah.
And my dad said, focus, you'll get to college. And that's how I kind of played ball. So I remember getting ready to buy a house. And obviously where I grew up, I knew what the price of the homes where I wanted to live. So I had a little bit of a vision, and I'm like going to save every dollar, met my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, Mindy. And we would just save everything. We would give ourselves $50. We'd go out to dinner one night a week on Fridays. We would get the same thing. We'd split an appetizer. We'd split an entree. And we were saving. And then I'm eligible for the 401k at MetLife. And it was like, if you put 4% in, they gave you a 5% match. And I didn't sign up. And I was telling my mom, I said, hey, Mom, she said, you're signing up for that thing right now. That's what's called the forced savings, and you need to do that. And she said, listen, the 4% you're putting in, let's just call it $100. You're making $100. That's $4. After the tax benefit, it's only $2. You're not even going to feel it.
Yeah.
And if you go and buy a soda at lunch, buy one less a week, one every other week. And I'm like, okay. And I signed up, and it was the best thing I ever did. And that thing just mushroomed and accumulated. But that was the first time. So you think of 2 tips, right? Envelope system she gave me, which was a way of saving for something that you had. So I remember as an advisor in this business, I bought my first life insurance policy. It was $80 a month, actually $81 a month. And I remember I just put $20 in the envelope. I never had a checkbook until I met my girlfriend. And she's like, how could you not have a checkbook? Because I said, I don't want checks. I don't want credit cards. And I just saved like that. And I had a little passbook that I go to the bank every Friday, like an old Italian guy from Brooklyn. But it worked.
It does
work. It works. So it was simple, but
effective.
It taught that stuff. Then I came in the business and I went through some training to help clients. And one of the sayings that I got was from the Kinder brothers. And his name was Jack Kinder, and he was a mentor of mine. And he taught me the saying was, pay yourself first. So if you think about a lot to unbundle there, right? Pay yourself first. Forced savings plans like 401ks, envelope system, because that helps you budget. I was kind of on my way to starting to save. But back to the story of my mom, I came in the business and all you really needed at the time was a car. I didn't have a car. And you needed suits and like a briefcase, right? So about $5,000. So I borrowed the $5,000 from my mom, and I bought a car that had 90,000 miles on it. It was $2,800, and bought some suits, and I did kind of like the variety pack, right? You buy like 2 blue suits, different ties, a couple of shirts, 1 blazer.
So you can mix and match.
Yep. And
get
like
20 outfits out of that.
3 pairs of slacks, and you're kind of off and running. Once again, my mom taught me that. And obviously, as you progress in life and you progress in your finances, you can start to step up the suits you buy or the places you dine. But you have to start somewhere. And that was really, really important for me in how we started.
It sounds like your dad was influential to you in so many ways, but it seems like financially it was your mom.
And business, it was my mom, definitely.
Where do you think she learned that?
I think you learn probably from her parents, but also from like that era. My dad was different, but my mom, like they bought a house. You tried to send your kids to school. You tried to scrimp and scram to do the right things. And I think that was just kind of that era, the depression. Like even today, my mom, she's 85 and in great shape.
She is in great shape.
She's still saving. And I'm like, Ma, spend your money, like enjoy yourself. But it's just built in planning for grandchildren, give the grandchildren weddings and stuff. So she's planning.
Would you say that you all were middle class growing up?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, we were probably in our neighborhood, we were probably considered middle class because everyone was very similar. Probably we're better than a few. And worse than a lot.
Probably worse than a few.
When I came in the business and I did a fact find for my parents and got all their stuff, like how much they had saved, how much they had here, what they made, I was like, how did we live?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
I was blown away.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's that, yes, you seem very blessed. You had a roof over your head. You had a loving family. There seemed to be food on the table, enough money for you to play Little League and play sports.
Have a glove, have a new football, get stuff on Christmas.
Exactly. You had shoes on your feet.
Yep.
But it doesn't seem like after that, which you are blessed right there, of course.
No doubt.
But, maybe your mom had to have a lot of envelopes and a lot of money management.
She did.
To make sure that could happen. It doesn't seem like there was a lot left over.
No. And we went on one vacation a year. We went winter break for school. Yeah. We went to a place called Villa Roma in the Catskills with a lot of other families. That was like our one trip. They had timeshares there, I remember. And my parents wouldn't buy one because they couldn't afford it. So we'd always go there. I said we went to Disney twice. I remember this like yesterday. I went to the Little League World Series in Federation Baseball, not in Williamsport.
Yeah. When
I was 10 and when I was 12, both were in Georgia. And the team flew because they raised money. And my parents drove.
Yeah.
They drove. And we always had, when I got my license, my brother got his shortly after mine. We had one car.
Yeah. One family car.
One car for the family. Once in a while, we finally got like a second one. Mm-hmm. But all four people drove. So we'd have to drive my mom somewhere or my dad to use the car. So it was just different, but we didn't know any different.
You didn't know any different. I know that 23-year-old Paul had a vision for his future because you always talk about it. But growing up and seeing, probably more your mom, I don't know how vocal she was with this struggle or if it was tense in your household. But say, did 12-year-old or 15-year-old Paul have a vision to say, I don't want this to be a problem for me, or I don't want money to be an issue. I want to change this.
I didn't, even though I remember the fights and I remember sitting on the steps, and it was always when my dad lost a job or or I was failing out of a class or something, they would fight. That was it. So I caused a lot of grief. But other than that, I don't think I ever really looked at it like that. I don't think I ever really rationalized because I didn't want for anything. Correct. I don't think I was actually telling this story this morning when I came in the business. I hit the ground running and, I was asked a question during my interview, what's your goal? And I said, I want to make $100,000. And the question was, why? Mm-hmm. And I said, because one thing I heard in college was that 2% of the United States make $100,000. And I wanted to be in the top 2%.
Yep.
So when I got there, I realized that money was not motivational to me. It was
when you made your 100.
Yeah, I made it.
Your 100
grand.
I
made it very quickly.
It wasn't the number that was motivating to you.
The number or the money. Yeah. It was about winning. It was about impacting people. It was probably fifth or sixth. But I found that a lot of entrepreneurs that I talk to, if that's not the guiding factor, you could be so much better.
If money is not the guiding factor.
Yeah, if it's not the thing that drives you. And I think that back to my parents, why they fought was they weren't fighting over money. They were fighting over money to live.
Yeah.
Where when you start to make it, if you save, you should never have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's that security. So as much as you get out of school and you say, I want to get here, and you think about the house and all that, I never thought of the money part of that, like meaning I needed to save X, but I never thought about how much I needed to make. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You thought about what it would take for you to save the money, but you didn't think how much you needed to make to live plus save the money.
Yep. And I always try to teach people, though, I think one of the things that our society struggles with today is when you look at the top 10 paying jobs or the top 10 careers and you pick one, and let's say you pick number 32.
Yeah.
Well, and 32 makes $80,000 a year.
Yep.
You have a certain lifestyle that you live at, just like my dad driving a concrete truck. There's only certain lifestyle. So I think our society today has to be super conscious of, if you want X, you have to go and do Y.
Correct. Trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
And that's what it is.
Discipline.
Yep. And education. It could be,
fair.
It could be getting going to a trade versus. So I think that one of the things we have to teach children is, if you have goals and visions, try to align your goals and visions. And if there's an economic piece to it, line it up to that. You can love what you do, but you might not ever have the house or the car you want, or you might not be able to send your kids to private school.
Yeah, there's a lot of stats out there where, the amount of money you make is less important than your saving habits.
Correct.
And it seems like you, thanks to your mother,
Yes.
beautiful Roseanne, teaching you the envelope system, teaching you forced savings. I mean, can you imagine if you didn't start your 401k
No doubt
until your 30s or 40s and
Yeah.
you lost out on all those years?
And prior to, you might not remember this, but there was a lot of people at Barnum that I forced them to sign up for that.
I was one of them. Do you remember?
Yes. And they were here. Some of them were here 3 years, and I'm like, sit with them. I'm doing this.
That's what you did with me. I was 24.
Correct. So
and you asked me and I said, my what?
Yep. And that's what I think has to happen in our society is you need someone to pay it forward with you with savings. But also remember, I think what's really important, I told the story about sharing a meal and an appetizer and only taking $50 allowance. I think it's really important that at stages of your life, you live within your means. And I don't think people understood that.
I was going to say, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So I could have had a credit card, right? And I could have went to dinner and prayed, but I paid with cash because I was afraid. I knew friends that were my age that were charging everything. And then they didn't have the money to pay the bill.
Live within your means is simple. It's knowing how much you make.
Correct.
And knowing how much you spend.
Yes.
And keeping those aligned.
Correct.
Not
and
spending,
tracking it.
Yes. Not spending more than you make.
No doubt. And listen, many people now are trying to get 10,000 steps in. You could go to you go to dinner one night. If you go to a strip mall and you'll see someone walking around the mall and what are they doing? Oh, I got to get their finished steps in, but they're not tracking like their finances and they're not tracking their spending. And it's way more complex today.
It is.
So just like,
it is.
You didn't have to have cable. You didn't have to have a phone.
And you didn't have all these various mechanisms for where your money is.
Correct.
Yep.
So
but still.
I still think if you keep it simple and you pay yourself first, you could start to accumulate some wealth.
Okay. So take us now, you just started working. You have a vision. You want to buy this house. You started as a financial advisor, helping yourself and helping people make money. What did money feel like for you there? When did you start to get to a place where you could throw money in savings and you could, buying a house is a really big goal from zero.
Yep.
When did you start to say, wow, I'm here. I'm almost there. Like this is actually going to happen for me.
3 years. 3 years, but you start seeing, like, to me, what makes me who I am is I love progress in anything. It could be just cleaning the house.
Yep.
Like if I start cleaning and I'm doing the sink, I want it totally done. I want to see the finished product. That to me is how I win. So savings to me every week when I went and put money in that passbook, and I got the book and I saw the account move up.
Yeah, the number go up.
That was super exciting to me. It was literally $40. It could have went up. But however I could get it to move, I wanted to see it move.
Yep. Did you have money values at that age? What did money mean to you? Some people, it means status. Some people it meant safety. Some people it means freedom.
I think it was just, for me, it was really the next step in my life to get a home. So I never really looked at the money. I looked at what the money was going to do.
Okay.
So I was so focused on buying a home.
Yeah. You were goal focused and money was one of the vehicles that was going to get you to that
So
goal.
I needed to be successful in the business to make a living.
So your question was, how could I get to my house the fastest?
Yeah. And then obviously as I was more successful in business, the house changed and the house evolved. Then listen, I made one of the cardinal sin mistakes ever. My dad, who, as you're saying now, I got my financial advice from my mom. I wish he would have told me that years ago, but I go to my dad and I'm buying this house now finally. Had a substantial amount of money saved. And he said to me, put as much as you could down on the house so you have the lowest mortgage possible, which conceptually sounds good.
Yeah, smart.
Not when you're an entrepreneur and you're owning your own business,
and you have no cash,
and then you have no money. So I did that. And then he was like, when are you going to furnish this place? And I'm like,
that's right. Cause you said you bought it and then you guys were like, cause you bought it with
as much as I could. Yeah, as much as I could. Uh-huh. So I'm like, I have a low mortgage and I have no money. And now from a business perspective, I was in a very different place where.
Did you make the 3 years?
I got the house in 3 years, but the next 10 were really, really hard. Yeah. And what got me through those 10 years was those 3 years, all the forced savings. Those were the things I used to build the business.
To finance your business.
And when there was tough times starting out, I didn't have to borrow. I borrowed from my mom, but I didn't have to go to a bank. And all those forced savings, like the 401k and the life insurance, became assets to me to keep Barnum moving forward when I had those years that you do as an entrepreneur.
You sure?
So I thought that was very helpful.
Sure. And again, what we do every day is help people plan their future, and plan what do they need financially to live the life that they want. And a lot of it has to do with retiring in a certain way. And the early people who we talk to early in their career, it seems so far off. Yep. And they have a hard time envisioning it. And it's almost like I'll deal with that later. I don't need to save for that. I want to spend my money now. And unfortunately, when we talk to clients who are maybe in their 40s and 50s are feeling a little bit regretful. They wish they started in their 20s. Yep. Can you give any tips to our listeners who are like that, who maybe are a little bit younger and they just can't see retirement, but they know they should start saving now?
I would just say I was at a presentation once, very young, and I saw the time value of money. Yeah. Basically, yep. if you start at 20 and you put $50 a week away versus starting at 30, yep. the amount that you accumulate is so astronomically different. So what I've always tried to teach is there's no magic number. It's very personal. So you have to say, I'm willing to put X away. And that could be $30 a week. And as long as you start, if you're listening and you didn't start yet, start today.
Just do it.
And it could be $30.
Yeah.
And then when you get a raise or you make more or you get a gift from your family or the holidays, make it 40, then 50.
I love what you said about progress. Progress equals happiness. Yep. Everyone needs to see that. And I think psychologically people feel like a goal is too big. Like, that's, to me, that's amazing that you had this number you need for a house and you started at 0. But just seeing that progress every week of your bank account going from $10 to $20 to $30. Correct. And then eventually up to a couple $100,000 to get this house. But that's how progress works.
No doubt. And I'll tell you what, when it was one of the scary moments that I always remembered, and it was a weird one for me because I've always had goals that were progressive, right? You go to school, you graduate, you get a career, then you start to do better. Mm-hmm. You're an athlete, you're hitting baseball, and now you're getting better and you're playing, you're going to play on the high school and college. But that progression is infinite. Mm-hmm. It should be. Saving's not sometimes. Yeah. So you're saving for that goal. You get the house, you walk in there, it's empty. Yeah. You're like, oh my God, I hit the goal. Yeah. What's next? And it's scary.
It is scary.
Because you're right, retirement seems so long, but you can sit there, and I did this for myself. I would say, okay, based on what I'm saving today, if the market did 8% return over the next 30 years, here's what I'll have. Mm-hmm. And then you can visualize the life you'll have by having that. And it's not about the pile, it's about what it's going to help you do when you get to that point.
Sounds like you're thinking you always had a vision for the life you wanted. And then you backed into the money. What do I need to make that happen? Versus you often hear people attaching a number to happiness.
Yeah.
If only I made X amount of money. Once I can make X amount of money more,
yep,
then I'll
start
happier.
saving,
Yes.
or I'll do this.
Yes.
And listen, it was about, you know, you're getting, if you're getting married and you want to have children, you know that there's going to be a cost for college.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And my goal was, forget about paying for it. I wanted my kids to have no debt, whatever they went to, if I could. If I couldn't, then I'd have to split the cost with them. But my goal was to try to do that. So all the things I used for savings were important. And I think that's what people sometimes, it's not difficult. The discipline part is difficult.
And that's exactly what it is. And you've always been very disciplined, which, you know, I would say is one of the characteristics that made you so successful. Is truly just doing what you say you're going to do, publicly and privately.
Yes. Well, thank you. And I think it's important that you set little goals, like, you know, that $2,800 car was going to crap out, and it did on a drive up here. Then I've been holding out on buying a new car. I didn't even buy it. I leased it because I didn't want to put the money down. So you leased the car, and you then did it when I had to, not because I wanted a new car.
Because you were forced to do it. As your career progressed and as, you know, thank gosh, and lucky for all of the employees here and all the clients, Barnum is one of the biggest agencies in the country. And you found success for yourself and for your family. How has your money values changed, or how do you still think of money the same way now as you did back when?
Yeah, it's going to sound silly, but I think that all of us still feel a little like we haven't arrived.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we brought our children up. And we're not silly. We understand that we've accumulated and we have wealth, right? But we're still savings like we saved when we were 22, and we're teaching our children to do that. And so far, 2 out of the 3 are really good. Next one's not in the workforce yet, so we'll see. But the other 2 are very, very great and very in different ways. One is in the business, so she's doing it, and the other one I'm helping. And they're both doing the same thing, and they're very smart. I wouldn't say they're frugal, but they're smart about what they do. And, you know, once again, my mom will go to Bloomingdale's and she'll find coupons and ways to get it offline, or she'll find something outside. And she's taught that to my daughters. Yeah. So they're following those footsteps and they're paying themselves first.
Yeah.
They have the forced savings.
Yep. It seems like the envelope system, forced savings, paying yourself first, living within your means. None of this is rocket science.
It's not.
But
it's not easy, though.
It's not easy. Simple. One of those simple but not easy things. But from what I'm hearing, and I hope what the listeners are taking away, this was your foundation.
Yes. And here's a big one. If you in life can learn to be, the biggest competition you should have is with yourself. And if you can get comfortable with that, making sure you're getting better in every aspect. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. And by the way, if you do that with working out, or you do that with your profession, or if you do that with your relationships, that will carry into money. And too many people, we talk about keeping up with the Joneses, right? But you should only be keeping up with yourself and your own goals. You don't have to have what others. My mom would say to me, if you want what others, go figure out what they do and go do it.
Yeah. That was my last question before we have to end the show is, throughout all of this, Paul, you never mentioned keeping up with the Joneses or comparing yourself to somebody else, or, you know, how it felt when maybe your friends were putting things on credit and you couldn't do X, Y, or Z with them. How did you fight that urge all those years?
You know, first off, I admire success, any success. It could be sports, it could be school, it could be business, right? So what I always found, and a lot of family members and people I knew that were a lot older, he always wanted to be in listening to the old timers. I always liked to hear the stories. So I was really just comfortable with, if someone was successful, whatever they did, I wanted to learn. and learn how they got there. So I wasn't competing. I was trying to learn, and I knew what I wanted, and I kind of just stayed there. And I think athletics has helped with that. I played a bunch of things, but baseball, I think, was really critical, because no matter how good you are in high school, college, if you go to the next level, you fail more than you succeed. So I always say I have a PhD in failure. And I try not to. And so competing, you're setting yourself up for failure, because you could be in a career that has unlimited income, and someone could be in a career that is a base and bonus or hourly. So I think you have to compete with yourself. And that's the progress for me.
Having those blinders, you had blinders on.
I really did. I was educated enough to see. And now I look around and you could always, find someone. And my dad would say, as an athlete, you might be really good in Brooklyn, but you go to college, now you're competing at the country. And then he says, you go to the pros, there's some kid in some other country. That's how business is. And that's how savings is. So I think you have to stay within your means and compete with yourself.
Focus on yourself. Like anything, you just need to focus on yourself.
Yeah. And I think that's how you win.
Yep. Paul, this was absolutely amazing. You shared so many simple, relevant tips that any person at any stage of life, any stage of their career, any stage with money could start to implement immediately. We are so grateful to have had you on. Thank you for everything you give to our industry, to our clients, and to the employees and advisors here. We are all grateful for you.
And I'll say that right back to you. This show is so important to people out there starting out, because there's a lot to accomplish when it comes to money. So thank you for doing it. And it's a pleasure being on the show.
For all of you listening, Paul runs his own podcast. It's called Small Steps, Big Wins. And this podcast focuses on entrepreneurial journeys. And he talks to entrepreneurs about their journey to success and all of the trials and tribulations along the way. If you get a chance, hop over. You could find that podcast anywhere you listen to your podcast. It's also a great show. Thank you for listening to Master Your Money. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Every little bit helps. You can also follow us on our Instagram at Barnum Financial Group. If you're interested in connecting or working with a financial advisor at the Barnum Financial Group, the links are in the show notes of this episode.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.